A name that'll be well known to most sports fans in the county is that of Jack Gilheaney. Normally, I suppose, talking about locally in Fenagh GAA circles, but has been making waves in another sport and another code of football, and that, of course, is rugby union. He joins me now to chat about his season so far. Jack, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thanks very much for having me, Brefty. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, we've had you on before from a Gaelic point of view, I think after you were beaten by Mull back in the group stages of the senior championship here in the county, but I suppose the last couple of weekends you've been mostly focused on your rugby career, start of the new Energia Community Series. You're in the Leinster branch of that with Old Belvedere, a fairly well-established name in the world of rugby union in the country.
Yeah, so the last few weeks I've been playing, kind of trying to juggle both. So with my inter-county commitments with Leitrim and then my rugby commitments up in Dublin with Old Belvedere. So we've been training since the middle of August. We had our first game last weekend against Trinity. Got a good beating, unfortunately, but it was I suppose the first run out. Yes, then we were beaten by UC, but a much improved performance. So again, we go next weekend now. We've Old Wesley, so it's kind of every week there's a new game to look forward to and a new game to prepare for. So really enjoy it at the moment.
Let's chat a bit about the differences between that, I suppose, elite sport, because you're playing at the elite level of both codes in the country at the moment. Old Belvedere, they're normally in Division 1B of the AIL, which is the second tier. I suppose we've had other AIL representation this season. Matthew Earley's with Sligo in 2B, which is effectively the fourth division. Yeah. What's the standard like? And because this is your first time playing at the senior level, having come out in 20s, or did you play a bit last season?
I played, so I joined Old Belvedere once I left boarding school. And I played under 20s, but I got 2 AL caps that year, and that was Division 1B as well. Eddie O'Sullivan, actually the former Irish head coach, was our head coach at the time. Then last year, so my second year 20s, and I also got another 1 or 2 AL caps that season. Then last year I kind of, I suppose Terry was on to me, so I committed to Leitrim Seniors. I was over on Erasmus in Rotterdam, so I suppose I had to kind of make some choice, so I used to come home every weekend for them. And then now this season, obviously, I'm out of under 20s, so I kind of have to have my full commitments with the senior team.
What was the reasoning for being in Rotterdam? And is it crazy to fly home every weekend?
Yeah, so it's just part of, I suppose, as part of my college course. I'm doing global business in Trinity. So as part of your third year, you have the option to go abroad. You can go abroad for a full year or one semester. So I chose to go one semester. So I went from, well, I was supposed to be from January until the end of June. But unfortunately, due to COVID, it was cut short. So I was only there for 8 weeks. But yeah, I used to fly home. So I'd get the train from Rotterdam to Amsterdam, fly then from Amsterdam to Dublin, train from Dublin to Leitrim, and then train on a Friday night, and then fly back on a Monday morning after the league match.
And like that, obviously, not only the physical toll of that travelling, but the cost of that must be substantial enough. How did you manage that?
Yeah, well, Leitrim kind of paid for all the
travel expenses.
Yeah, travel expenses and all that was funded by Leitrim. But yeah, it was just the physical toll, and I suppose the mental toll did. I was only doing it for 8 weeks, I suppose, so maybe it was kind of the energy, had that energy to keep going for that time. I don't know if maybe it was going into the middle of June, it could be a different story, but I enjoyed it for the time I was doing it now, and it was worth it. I think we had a good run in the league. I know obviously not over yet, but I enjoyed it for that few weeks.
What was your introduction to rugby? Because obviously rugby, Carrick, I know, are around now, and in the north of the county they have the option of Sligo, although there's not that huge representation from the north of the county in Sligo Rugby Club at adult level at least. But how did you end up playing rugby? Was it a schools thing?
No, so when I was 7 or 8, I started off playing in Carrick Rugby Club here. We actually used to train out the front of Cartown. That was their playing fields at the moment. Then played in Leitrim Gales for a while, and then they've now got their own facilities. Then when I was about 12 or 13, I moved to Longford Rugby Club, because I'm from Fenagh, so it's only about half an hour kind of the boat, so it doesn't really make much difference travel time. And they're obviously based in Leinster, so I suppose it'd be a bit more competition there. You're playing against bigger clubs. The likes of Mullingar and all those clubs are kind of bigger ones. Then when I was, after I did my junior cert, I went to boarding school in Kildare, so I went to Clongowes. So obviously that's kind of quite infamous for rugby, and so I played senior cup with them, played 2 years of senior cup, and then after I left there I joined Old Belvedere, and I'm still there now, so I'm really enjoying it.
In terms of Old Belvedere, as you mentioned, up to this season you've had maybe 3 or 4 appearances spread out over 2 seasons, maybe season and a half. In terms of this season though, you've had a bright start. You played half in the first game, disappointing defeat, beaten again last week, but you played the full 80 minutes. How nice is it to now be kind of a real part of that squad, that it's not just a kind of we'll see what he's up to, you're actually starting?
Oh yeah, no, it's great. It was really good, really professional environment in the club, like you've really good. I think we've you know, we have 3 or 4, you know, kind of designated coaches. You have a backs coach, forwards coach, like Mike Ross, the former Irish prop, he's the forwards coach. Really good S&C. It's a really professional environment, and you know, you're with, I suppose I'd nearly be one of the younger guys on the team as well. I'm only 21. You'll be playing with guys who are 27, 28, so that kind of age group. So it is challenging. It kind of, I suppose, fast forwards your development as well. You're playing against a lot bigger guys, you know, compared to what was maybe come against in football and all. But I like the, you know, the physicality is probably one thing that I like, and you know, it's good to test yourself out against kind of the top players that you can come up against.
And of course you're a centre, wearing 12 at the weekend, so that would be traditionally, I suppose for the listeners who are listening who might not have watched that much rugby, it's the Gordon Darcy position just inside Brian O'Driscoll. Is that your normal position, or where would you normally find yourself?
Yeah, well, in schools I played at fullback and number 15, but I think I prefer centre would be my preferred position if I was to choose one. You're always kind of in the thick of things, and I suppose I kind of like to, I wouldn't be seen as more kind of physical kind of hard runner. I'd be more kind of distributor, play the ball out. So, but I think that's probably my favourite position because you're kind of involved most. And whereas at 15 you can kind of not hide from the game, but the game kind of pass you by without kind of getting involved because you're in the backfield. So yeah, no, centre would definitely be my favourite position. Let's
talk about differences between the two, and I mightn't go down to too well around here, but of course it's very unlikely that you'll be able to play at those levels for many years without serious clashes, just given the intensity of the two codes. Do you have a preference, and why? Like, does your heart or your head have different preferences in terms of rugby versus Gaelic football?
It's not. It's like it's. I love playing both sports equally. I suppose for me, because I went to a boarding school, a lot of my friends would kind of be from Dublin. I have a big social life in Dublin. My girlfriend's from Dublin, so I suppose when you're playing inter-county football, you're forced to be kind of coming home, and you're nearly giving up every weekend between the 1st of January and say the end of June, to whenever you kind of get through in the county championship. So like for me, that's probably just not something that I really enjoy that much. Whereas like rugby, like we got our fixtures list there at the start of August, and we got all of our fixtures right through to the end of May. And I know what weekends I have off, and you know, so if we have a weekend off, we train on Tuesday and Thursday, but we don't train that weekend at all. So I think you can kind of, I suppose more the culture around it, you can kind of plan your life a bit more. So that's something which really attracts me to rugby as opposed to maybe inter-county football. But I'll definitely still be playing club football with Fenagh, and you know, the summers are always free. So I suppose they work well together with club and rugby, because obviously rugby stops say at the start of May, and that's kind of when club football only heats up, and then when club football is dying down, that's kind of when only rugby's coming up. But I suppose it won't really be possible to play the inter-county level and rugby either at the same time.
You will see out this season though with Leitrim?
Yeah, I will.
All clashes aside, depending on how the fixtures fall as we go on for the next few weeks. Let's talk about some other people that are involved in the rugby, because there's a couple of different routes through rugby, because when people talk about rugby or soccer versus Gaelic, it always comes down in most people's discussions around a pub table to money. And the reality is that the vast majority of players, particularly at club level, are not getting a penny for their efforts. In fact, they're probably paying subs and memberships and bringing in sponsorships, player sponsorships, to actually just be at the club. So money doesn't really come into it on that, in the level that you're at the moment. It does maybe in the provincial game, but if we look at, say, 2 or 3 players that are playing at a decent level in rugby now, I know Jack Matthews here from Carrick and Shannon is kind of making his way through the channels in Leinster as well, but Shane from Bornacoola, Shane Mallon, has made an impact at academy level in Leinster, and he's in with UCD now and they're under 20 Skide. You're playing AIL in Division 1B. Matthew Earley's got 2 seasons under his belt at Division 2B. And there's some players starting to make waves, but the route that Shane, for example, has taken versus the route you've taken, you weren't involved with academies coming up through. No. Your brother was.
Tom was at Leinster 18s, yeah.
But Shane was Leinster 18s the following year. But in terms of that route, is there a route back into the professional game for you, or are you even interested in that?
It's not, well, there probably wouldn't be, well, like there is always, I mean, it happened, a guy who was 2 years above me in Clongowes, Rowan Osborne, he never made any Leinster, well, not that I know, he wasn't in the Leinster Academy, and now he's a full-on professional contract because he performed well in the IL with Trinity. So yeah, there is a route there. It's probably, I suppose it's kind of something you say you're not interested in, but then if the offer came, obviously. But no, at the moment, I'm just loving playing, not a social level, it's still a high level of rugby with that social element, and then you kind of still focus on your career, professional career in terms of work and all that. So yeah, it wouldn't be something I'd be interested in, but the same, it's easy saying that now. But no, there is definitely still a route in. I mean, Rowan's a prime example where if you just perform well with your club in the AIL, you will get noticed, and especially I suppose that he was a scrum half, so I think Leinster had 1 or 2 injuries, and now he's actually a full-time professional contract with them, so there is definitely a route there.
But is that a route that, is there a preference? Because I look back, say, if we compare it to the Leaving Cert, and it's all the rage at the moment in terms of discussion about routes through college, and sometimes I would advocate to people who aren't quite sure what they want, don't commit to a 4-year programme, go do a 2-year programme and then get a 3rd year and a 4th year add-on. Is that idea of going and getting first team rugby where every result matters to the club in the AIL versus maybe the academy where you don't get as many games, you don't get to maybe get that rough and tumble of games that actually matter when you do get games?
Yeah, there is a thing like a lot of academy players are obviously associated with a club, so we'd have a few of them. We'd have Martin Maloney, was there last year, he was with us. So like every kind of player in the academy would be associated, and then if they weren't getting game time, say with Leinster A or with the Leinster senior team, they would be then sent back to their club to play on a weekend to try and get that game, try and get game time under their belts, I suppose. But yeah, of course, like every club will have their own interests as well. So the club will obviously want to try and say with us in Old Belvedere, we'll try to win as every game that we come up against. So like you're not going to be putting on players maybe who don't fit into the system and all that. So yeah, that is obviously a tough one for players in that situation. But I'm sure Leinster and all, that's kind of up to them to manage that. So they seem to be doing okay at it so far.
In terms of the season ahead, a half season to come from January in the AIL, is that a concern that it's only 1 round of fixtures, you play each team once and there's no promotion or relegation? Yeah. Is that a bit of a dead rubber season?
Yeah, that was one of the causes of concern. I think that came out. Now, in fairness, I don't think any team is taken as a dead rubber season. I think because if you take one season off, you start losing players, you start losing momentum, and all of a sudden you probably end up getting relegated next season. So you still have to keep your foot in the gas. It is disappointment because it does take away the element of competition to a certain extent. Because obviously now, if you win or lose a game, it doesn't really matter because you're going to be in the same position next year regardless. But I think the way we're looking at it is more kind of we're building towards next season, or we're building this season anyway, but use it as a building block towards next season because you can't afford to lose up ground in one season. It's too high a level to slip up for one season, so you need to keep building every year.
What's the atmosphere like in Old Belvedere at the moment?
That's great. That's another thing about rugby, is a great social aspect. Now I know it's unfortunate the way the bars and clubs are all closed up in Dublin at the moment, but usually after a match be free beer, free food up in the clubhouse afterwards. A real kind of...
I better stop you because you might have the whole GA.
It's a real club atmosphere. You kind of think because there's guys coming from all over. I'm from Leitrim, lads from Dublin, lads from everywhere. But it's a real kind of close. It is like a community in itself. Everyone be up in the bar afterwards. So hopefully we can get back to that stage. Hopefully at some stage when the restrictions allow us to do that.
Yeah, no, because I've been at a few Sligo games and they've got players from Samoa. They've 2 new Brazilian international players playing with them as well. It's mad to see all these different, as well as within Ireland, all these different nationalities all mixing together and playing at different levels. I think there's a Canadian guy on the wing for them who's an absolute flyer. So it's great to kind of see and experience that mixing as well that maybe we don't get on a local level all that often. In terms of some child maybe who's in the county who maybe plays a bit of rugby, whether it's in Sligo or Longford or Carrick, and has ideas of maybe going down that route, what would your advice be to maybe an 11 or 12 year old who's making that decision, or maybe enjoys every sport he's playing, whether it's soccer, rugby, Gaelic?
Well, I'd say play every sport that you can for as long as you can, because each sport does complement one another. It probably gets now, when you get to I'm 21, so maybe you just get to this age, you have to start making sacrifices, which I'm probably in that position I have to now. But play every sport for as long as you can and enjoy every sport, because it doesn't last forever. So keep doing it as long as you can.
Excellent. Well, listen, tough start to the season, so we won't dwell on that too much, but congratulations, I suppose, on becoming an integral part of that first team squad in a club as esteemed as Old Belvedere. It's no easy task, so congratulations on that. Best luck with the rest of the inter-county season as well, and I'm sure we'll be chatting to you in the coming weeks and months.
Thanks very much, Bethany.